Hey guys, what's up? We have another episode of the Turning Tables for you guys, and we have some really interesting topics to hit on this week. So I figured we might as well get into the first one, which is Trump's recent speech that we heard. Um, Definitely an interesting speech and a lot to talk about. Roman, what was your thoughts on it?
I mean, I thought it was pretty unifying. Well, but I think once you got into it was a good speech. But once I think you got into the substance of the politics, I think it was a pretty bad speech. It's in substance, instead of
Yeah,
politics and substance of it.
yeah, I thought it was a good unifying speech. Obviously, some of it was kind of cringeworthy. The infrastructure, for example, people worried about, um, and the spending, the deficit spending. When he brought up the infrastructure, one thing that's interesting, though, is if you go on his page, one of the things he mentioned is starting to privatize the infrastructure, which I think is a great idea. I don't know about you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not really a fan of $1 trillion infrastructure program when we have a $20 trillion deficit or debt, I should say. So
Yeah, I'm not a fan of the spending either. I'm hoping the privatizing it, and as well as some other conservatives that might be in his ear talking to him about it, kind of move him away from all that spending and start cutting. But I am excited about potentially privatizing some of our infrastructure. I think it's kind of overdue. It kind of reminds me of, I don't know if you've seen this meme or not, but it's the political compass. And in the bottom libertarian right, it says Trump reveals plans to privatize roads. And then if you go on authoritarian right, it's like Trump to ban all Muslims. It says Trump is going to make the Republican Party the Workers' Party. It's
different
some
positions of
LGBT.
Trump.
Yeah. So it depends what you're going to get exactly. That was a part that was mentioned. So we'll see how that goes. One thing that I thought was nice was the kind of transfer of power from Obama to Trump. I thought it went pretty well. A few, I don't know if I'd even say they're far right winged or not, but they're very critical. There are some people even saying if something were to happen to Trump before being sworn in, Obama would basically have a third term. I don't know if there's any truth to that or not,
That's
but
not,
the point, this sounded wrong. But I thought he actually handled it pretty well for the most part.
yeah, I mean, both sides, for the most part, individual instances of them not handling it well, but I think for the most part, both sides handle it very well and are very professionally and statesmanly. And I think it's one of the best parts of America is our ability to have peaceful transition of power every 4 to 8 years. I mean, we could be living somewhere in Gambia right now where they have a constitutional crisis over the president refusing to give up power. And we're lucky enough that we don't ever have to worry about that. So not even a thought in most people's minds.
A few other points he made that I wanted to touch on. He kind of talked a little bit about trade, which is another issue I disagree with Trump on. Is protectionism. I'm a little worried about that, and I'm not sure if conservatives will be able to talk him out of that or not.
Yeah, I mean, I agree.
I mean,
from what I've heard, he wants a trade deal with Great Britain. So maybe while he won't expand free trade with less developed countries, he will expand it with like countries like Canada and the UK, which again would be better than nothing, I think.
yeah, and I'm hoping with the deregulations and which he actually, I don't know if you saw, but he is freezing all new regulations right now.
Yeah, that's fantastic. That's very good, Trump.
Yeah. So I think between that and the tax cuts, I'm hoping most companies won't leave because of that reason, and maybe the tariffs won't be as destructive as it would be under like a Hillary Clinton that increased the taxation and regulation.
I think the problem with that is over half the imports that our country are actually used in production. You're going to make almost all production more expensive. So maybe, I think the best case scenario is that the tariffs are offset.
Yeah, I mean that is a possibility. I mean, if you look at, say, a company were to bring in a part to a laptop, if they had to import that, that part's going to cost more. And even though the final product's mostly made here in the United States, the actual final cost is going to be transferred to the consumer. Um, in our last debate, which we'll hit on in another segment, one of the points that were brought up was the minimum wage and the prices basically moving down to the consumer. Whatever you do to a company, you do to the consumer. And you would basically see the same thing. The price would be passed on to the consumer, causing prices to inflate.
Yeah. So do you want to go ahead and like do the line by line of the Trump speech?
Sure, let's do it.
Trump started off his inauguration speech. Roberts, President Carter, President Clinton, President Bush, President Obama, fellow Americans and the rest of the world, thank you. The United States are now joined in a great national effort to rebuild our country and restore its promise for all our people. Together we determine the course of America and the word for many years to come. We will face challenges, we will confront hardships, but we will get the job done. Other only steps to carry out the orderly and peaceful transition of power. And we are grateful to President Obama and First Lady Michelle Obama for their gracious aid throughout this transition. They have been magnificent. Thank you. And I guess the only thing I have to say up to here is that, again, this is getting carried on the general tone of the transition. And it really did break with Trump's general tone from his campaign. And it really was pretty gracious and unifying, I think. Mm-hmm. And now really trying to like take an axe to President Obama.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely good that he's unifying. I don't know if the left actually cares or not. I mean, you saw the protest in D.C. and people protesting him being sworn in. I don't think the left actually cares about that. They don't tend to care much about facts as much as they do feelings and emotion. But I mean, you got to give them credit for at least trying.
Yeah, I don't think the left has already made up their mind about what they think Trump is and what he's going to be. So they're kind of in a tough position at this point.
Yeah.
But I don't remember Obama's inauguration speech because I was like 8 when that happened. But I think from what I've heard a lot of people saying is the Trump speech, in contrast to Obama's first speech, was a lot more attacking Bush, while Trump's speech was much more gracious from that standpoint.
Yeah.
But then Trump continued saying, today's ceremony, however, has a very special meaning, because today we are not merely transferring power from one administration to another or from one party to another. We are transferring power from DC and giving it back to you, the people. And I think this is really odd because the rest of the speech, a lot of it talks about how DC has power and they can control trade, to work for the people. And he keeps talking about wanting to transfer power from DC. And I think on the other hand, he does want to transfer power to DC. Take his $1 trillion stimulus with tariffs. This is all policies. He's stronger.
I mean, yeah. I mean, if you look at Trump, he is kind of a populist, which I'm not saying that's even a bad thing necessarily. But I think that's kind of what he's getting at is that he listens to the people regardless if the majority's right or not. And the reality is most people aren't really informed enough on trade to know, hey, protectionism is just a failed policy and all that. You know, in terms of, I don't know, I just feel it's kind of more of a talking point than policy.
Yeah.
Because if it's a policy talk, it's extremely vague.
I mean, it is extremely vague, and I'm really hoping he doesn't go through with it, and he ends up actually transferring power from DC. But I mean, I'm not confident he will do that. He means by transferring power from DC to the people, is that people get to decide what DC's power is used for, which isn't really transferring power from DC. It's just changing who's wording it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was just mostly, if anything, a talking point more than it is actually a policy.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, moving on, Trump continued saying, for too long, a small group of people, has reaped the rewards. People have poured costs. Washington flourish, but people are not sharing the wealth. politicians prospered, but the jobs left and the factories closed. And I actually do want to. In preparation for our Bernie debate, I looked at the median income stats for household, personal, and another income, and basically across the board, income has pretty much like doubled or tripled since the 60s, 70s, whenever a lot of stats now.
Yeah, honestly, when I was listening,
speaking,
go ahead. Sorry.
People are getting better off.
Sorry about that. You're cutting in and out. Yeah. At least for me, you were. That's why I started talking. I didn't realize you were speaking.
So, okay, well, I just read that. Then I actually get my stats so I can be specific about it.
But actually, yeah, when I heard him say that, it did kind of sound similar to something Sanders would say. Small population of people for certain issues. I think there's probably a little bit more truth to what Trump is saying, because you could blame a lot of government actions on our economy, to where the 1% has nothing to do with economic regulations and taxations and whatnot. But I think it's kind of the same thing as before. It's kind of a talking point. It's not really meant to be taken as fact or even a policy. I think it's nothing more than a talking point.
Yeah. And again, listen to this. In 1995, median family income in the United States, real median family income, so adjusted for inflation, what, 50, 60 years later, it's almost $72,000, so it's like $40,000 more.
I do want to point out
income,
that.
Really,
go ahead.
Go ahead. Real median personal income is up from, 1975 was 23,000 to 31,000 today. So that's going as much personal income. But I think the points noted, it was being 80-ish because when there was decrease in the late 70s because of high inflation. The way before the recession, that actually increased from 21,000 to 31,000-ish. So that's a $10,000 increase in about 30 years.
And I do think, I feel like with a lot of politicians and ideologies, they see a problem, but sometimes they go about diagnosing it and treating it wrong. Like, I think Bernie does see issues. I don't think he diagnoses it right at all. I think he gets it totally wrong. Kind of the same thing with Trump on some things. I do think Trump is slightly more on the right track than the delusional Bernie Sanders, obviously. But yeah, I think it kind of follows the same train of thought.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. Bernie Sanders is pretty wrong. And I think Trump, like Bernie, has good intentions. He just doesn't really know how to project them properly.
But I also want to point out, go ahead.
No, you can go ahead.
I wanted to point out, because I was looking at some people and what they thought of the speech.
Well, Brian cut out, so I'm going to keep going. Let's see. Trump also, as I said earlier, went on to say that jobs have left and factories have flourished. Well, if you actually look at the industrial... Okay. Got it. Do you want to jump back on the stream? This is a different hangout on the stream. Yes. Algebraic. I can just add you back in. So.
Okay, there we go. So, yeah, Sam, if you wouldn't mind just editing that part out.
Yeah, we'll just start over about that entire part. So I'll just reread that part of the speech.
Okay. They might have got that part. I think it was when I went to go look at my sources that it cut out.
just go ahead and we do that part of speech. That way it's more fluid.
Okay, go ahead.
Give me 1 second to pull up the stats so I get back up. All right. Trump went on to say, for too long, a small group in our nation's capital, has reaped the rewards of government, while the people have borne the cost. Washington flourished, but the people did not share in the wealth. But the jobs left and the factories closed. And I really want to talk about this part of the speech because it sounds really, really Bernie-esque. I mean, the entire part of a secret elite is somehow colluding and taking it with everyone else. It's really lefty.
Yeah.
But I mean, if you
go ahead.
If you look at median family income, real median family income, so adjusted for inflation, it has grown about 40,000 since the 1950s. And if you look at median personal income from the 1980, the bar before the Great Recession, it grew by about 10,000. And why, if you actually look at it a little longer, it doesn't seem as impressive. You have to take into account the statistic. It starts with looking at the great stagflation of the 70s and the Great Recession. So decade or two in there. That's the statistic. Really.
Yeah. I mean, when you hear it, it does sound like something Bernie would say. You kind of blame this vague group of people that can easily be vilified because they stand out from the norm. I do think there's more truth to what Trump is saying than what Bernie is saying, especially if you look at career politicians like Hillary Clinton that makes tens of millions of dollars as a politician, while a lot of the people that she claims to champion are struggling. She's doing quite well. So maybe if you were to kind of look at it in that light, there's definitely some truth there. And certainly if you look at government has actual influence on the economy to where billionaires don't. Billionaires have a good impact on the economy. They're creating things for the people. They're creating jobs. They're investing. So they actually do good things for the economy. There are politicians that are certainly hurting the economy, and they're hurting people, particularly low income people. So I think there's slightly more truth to what Trump is saying than what Bernie is saying. But yeah, that's just kind of my take on it.
Yeah, I think if you go on to the rest of that little part, he says, let's see, jobs have left, factories have closed going forward. The part about factories closing, people losing jobs, the true production has increased a lot. Whatever period you want to look at has been increasing a lot. And right now we're basically at an all-time high. And what we're seeing is jobs and automized. Now doing done by robots. That's a far bigger cause people losing trade is. Scott Sumner pointed that in one article for Econ Library cited, I think, on this, not this podcast, but maybe this podcast actually. I think that's what he did. But he pointed first quarter of 1987, which is a trade deficit, was 3.19. But in the most recent quarter, it's 2.26% of GDP. So, time to create a statistic. So, you can actually look at it, and our trade deficit has actually gotten smaller. Saying trade deficit across jobs, you think manufacturing jobs.
Yeah, and I don't know if I did some research on what people thought of the speech. I'm not sure which part Chris Matthews was referring to, but he said Trump's speech was racist and sounded like Hitler. Not sure. I'm not sure where he's getting that, honestly, but apparently it's somewhere in here. I'll look for it, but I don't recall anything that stood out along that lines.
Yeah, same. I mean, there, Chris Matthews. I think he even goes on to say, "But patriotism, there's no room for prejudice." So, I mean, you have to really be reading into the speech to get that. But anyways, he goes on to say, there and right now, because this moment is your moment. And I'd just like to point out about this, but I just really don't like this type of phrasing because it does sound kind of like populist authoritarian. And like a dictator is like a man of people, like almost Stalin-esque, it sounds like it to me.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure I would go that far or anything, but
I mean, Yeah, I'm not trying to compare him to Stalin, but I'm saying it's like something like almost Stalin-esque, like I am the man of the people. If you get what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I would probably just disagree there.
Okay, well, that's what we do here. So, anyways, he goes on to say, "It belongs to you." And again, this just sounds. This entire part to me just sounds really Stalin-esque, man of the people, dictatorship-esque. Anyways, again, saying it belongs to you. It belongs to everyone gathered here today and everyone watching all across America. This is your day. This is your celebration. This is the United States of America. As your country.
Yeah, I mean, when I listened to it, I took it more as like a unifying talking point than an actual policy. I mean, I don't think he's going to go around collectivizing the means of production or anything.
Neither do I, but I mean, again, the point isn't that he's going to be a communist. Is that he's taking the kind of same lines a lot of dictators take, in that I am the voice of the people. So if you challenge me, you're challenging the people.
I think most politicians would say something along those lines. So I think it's
Again, I don't like most politicians when they say it either. So, and I don't like populists when he's saying it, especially. But this is just my take. So
okay,
I'm gonna skip ahead a little because it's going all along the same general lines a bit.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. Let's go ahead. Just trying to find a good part, so I'll pick back up at. Okay, I think right here is actually a really good part to pick up at.
Okay.
And he says, quote, "Crime and the gangs and the drugs that have stolen too many lives and our black country have so much unrealized potential. This American carnage stops right here and right now. We are one nation, and their pain is our pain. Their dreams are our dreams, and their success will be our success. We share one heart, one home, and one glorious destiny. The oath of office I take today is an oath of allegiance to all Americans."
I thought that was a really good part of the speech. I think it did two parts. Obviously, it was unifying, which was a clear kind of message he was kind of putting. And then also he talked about, there's definitely heroin problem in a lot of parts of the country that I would agree has robbed our nation of potential that could have done really great things. It's kind of the same way I feel with abortion. When you abort a child, you lose the potential of what they could have done. So I feel it kind of follows the same train of thought.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I thought this was really a really good part of the speech, and will probably be my favorite part of the speech. And I really enjoyed listening to it for this part.
It was an excellent speech written-wise.
Yeah, I thought it was a really unifying part of the speech. And again, when someone like Chris Matthews says it's really dividing, I think really does rebut that, because this was really unifying, especially that section right here. He could have just as easily said, "Fuck you, left. Fuck the left. Put it right. Oh, we're gonna protect everyone else." But he's saying, "We are one country," and
and that's been a big message of his actually since he won. Even when he was accepting the victory from the Electoral College, he kind of talked about uniting people. He brought up the LGBTQ community and protecting them. So I think he's done a good job since winning of bringing a message of unity. But like I said, the left won't listen.
I agree. The left already made up his mind that they've basically elected Adolf Hitler. So, but yeah, I guess going on. He says, "For many decades, we've enriched foreign industry at the expense of American industry, subsidized the armies of other countries while allowing very military." And I really actually want to read this part also. So when he says we've enriched foreign industry at the expense of American industry, no, American industry still is the leading industry in the world, and it's getting stronger every year, basically. We've enriched foreign industry by letting them make T-shirts and iPhones, which are pretty cheap, and can be easily done by computers for low wages. Yet you're not being enriched by making T-shirts. You're not going to have a successful economy. I mean, look at what China produces. A lot of it is basically consumed.
It's cheap labor.
Yeah. And you look at what America produces, it's jet engines, satellites.
Stuff that pays.
Yes. I mean...
I do want to touch on another point in that part, though, where he talked about the military. I thought that was a good speech. I have been critical of our foreign policy in terms of helping other militaries while kind of neglecting our own. Um, I think he's put very smart people in charge of the military for the most part. So I do think that's something that will get better under Trump.
And
So.
just the law Mathis charge of defense, which I thought was really good. But again, as Mathis has said, NATO is the most successful alliance in history, or one of the most successful alliances. And if it wasn't around right now, he would want to create it. And that's really odd what Trump says. But I guess I just want to talk about this for one second. Okay. He's subsidizing other countries. Again, all of these countries, we're subsidizing them because it's in our interest to subsidize them. Again, it's not our interest for South Korea to be occupied by North Korea. It's not our interest for Poland and Latvia and Lithuania and Estonia to be occupied by Russia. We don't want China to be occupying Japan. That's not in our interest. And our military isn't really that depleted. We still have the most powerful military on the planet.
Well, I would say, though, with our military actions and sometimes the lack thereof, it has been pretty bad under the Obama administration. You know, I feel he's been kind of over-aggressive in some areas, like Libya. I feel he's been under-aggressive in places like Iraq with ISIS. So that's something I do look forward to being potentially improved.
I mean, I agree about that general critique of the Obama administration. The thing is, he said for decades, but I think it was past the Obama administration, and plus that isn't really subsidizing other countries. So I don't really think that's a fair reading of this to say that's what it's trying to refer to.
Yeah. So what else does he say?
He says, we've defended other nations' borders where we've used to defend our own, and we've spent trillions of dollars overseas, while America's infrastructure has fallen into despair. Again, especially this latter part is really lefty. I mean, that's Bernie Sanders 101 to say our infrastructure is falling apart. Again, yes. I would think it's not true to say that.
Well,
infrastructure is falling apart. If you want to talk for like 2 seconds, I can find a stat on this.
I know there are some places that aren't the best, but I don't think government spending would improve it. I don't think simply throwing money at the problem. Same thing with education. Just because you throw money at it doesn't mean it's going to get better. So that's one issue. But he mentioned we worry about other countries' borders and not our own. I would agree with that. That's something I heard Ron Paul say in 2012 debate, I think, that we're more worried about the border between Afghanistan and Pakistan than the United States and Mexico. I think there's some truth there.
Well,
because I think our border needs to be a priority over theirs.
Well, in fairness to Pakistan and Afghanistan, Pakistan has nukes. So I think that is a pretty big priority to keep a nuclear bomb from falling.
Well, I mean, you can pick whichever countries you want, but the point is...
Well, I think a lot of the countries where we worry about nukes or wars is because we don't want a war to start out there.
No, I understand that, but I don't think we should do it at the expense of the American people, which is another theme of his speech, America First. I think that's what Chris Matthews was referring to as being racist, which I don't understand at all.
I mean, I think it's actually, I would argue it's in our benefit to keep the world as peaceful as possible. But just getting back to the infrastructure point, I have a chart here. The share of bridges in the U.S. that are structurally efficient has fallen every year since the 1990s, and this goes all the way back to 2013. Percent of our bridges are structurally deficient. And a World Economic Forum report from 2014, I believe it was, said we had the 12th infrastructure in the world.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not an expert in infrastructure, at least United States infrastructure. I know a little bit more actually about foreign. And a lot of nations that have foreign or privatized infrastructures actually are quite well. And I know Trump has mentioned, it's actually on his website, he mentions unleashing, forgot his wording, but it was essentially allowing some privatization, which is something I'm excited for in potentially the future to improve our infrastructure. Yeah, like one thing I know, one of the talking points, because Bernie Sanders kind of has a similar argument. Bernie Sanders would cite a lot of other nations, which he does a lot. But kind of like with Scandinavian, he doesn't realize a lot of those countries that have good infrastructure are privatized.
Yeah, and I mean, I think interestingly, his VP Mike Pence, his state has a privatized highway.
Oh, it does? I didn't know that.
Yeah, it happened under the governor before him, but he privatized the highway.
That's awesome.
A pretty major one. So maybe he can do some good influence there.
Yeah.
So I guess we should probably continue at this point. We've made our countries, other countries rich, while the wealth, strength, and confidence of our country is diminished a bit over the horizon. I think, I mean, on both mounts, wealth and strength, in the long term, and really looking at anything beyond maybe the last 5 years, he's wrong on both counts. We basically have become a lot stronger and a lot more wealthy.
It's kind of a vague statement on what he's specifically referring to, if it's trade, if it's foreign, whatever he's referring to. So it's kind of hard to really talk specifically about it if we don't have specifics to talk about. It's kind of vague.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's usually pretty vague. So, but he goes on to say, one by one, the fact that he showed and left our shores without even a thought about millions of Americans. And again, it's not a job of a company to think about the workers.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Profit. But beyond that, again, our production is maximized, and a lot of the jobs have lost. I think about this, like 95% of manufacturing jobs lost in our recent history is because of mechanization, not because of trade.
Yeah, I mean, if you have a job where you're kind of doing repetitive work, you might want to increase your skills elsewhere because you have to compete with technology as well as foreigners. So that's just the reality of the free market. The free market will pick the most efficient means to get to its end goal. And if you're not its most efficient means, then you're kind of a burden to society in a way, at least in the economic sense. Yeah. So I agree.
I mean, my senior thesis was about the Trump vote now from Fox 38 was you were significantly by like vote for Trump if your county had about 40% of its jobs that were repetitive, i.e. meaning that they were jobs that could be replaced. Going beyond that, I think one idea I have is a program from the government, which if you want to leave your run-down community that's dying because of lost manufacturing, that the government would basically rent the U-Haul. But that's just me.
Now, I do think what Trump has done in terms of, when you talk about, you hear people talk about fair trade. The problem is, the reason it's not fair is because our workers have this huge burden of regulation and taxation on them that the company is going to kind of discriminate a bit if they realize that that's basically additional cost of labor. So when you remove some of that, you actually make it more fair for American workers. And I think it was Ford or GM, one of them, the CEO specifically said his economy was more business friendly. And that did bring some jobs back. So that is a way you could do it. But protectionism isn't the way.
Yeah, I agree. Protectionism is not the way. Yeah, he goes on. Most of our middle class has been ripped from their homes, and then we're distributed across the world. Again, this is so Bernie-esque. Middle class is shrinking. But again, as I had prepared for this debate, that's just not true at all. The middle class just shrink, or at least very accurate when you look at the context. The middle class is shrinking, but that's because it's actually moving up. No matter how you cut the numbers, if you look at the middle class 1980, the lower class 1980, and the upper class 1980, both the middle and the lower class got richer, but the upper class got smaller. But the upper class, when this was said by the same amount, British classes and middle class, this is something we should be celebrating, not being sad about.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I will say is some of the things he's saying, I think it's more just to unify the country than hopefully as an actual policy. Maybe give them kind of a common set of beliefs. A lot of people are struggling. So maybe he's using that as being a unifying factor. That was kind of the theme of his speech, to unify. So that's always a possibility too. It depends on how you look into it and perceive it.
Yeah. And I hear a lot of his followers saying that I'm protectionist. But basically, like 2 paragraphs later, he says, "quote Protection will lead to great prosperity and strength."
Yeah.
I mean, that seems pretty clear. He's saying, "Yeah, I'm a protectionist."
Yeah, it's either that. Now, I do agree. That is how I interpret it, but just throwing this out here for a talking point, um, he could be referring to potential military or even border security as being protection. But yeah, I mean, I interpreted it the same way, which
Yeah,
I
but I
wasn't
mean,
happy about. That was probably the most cringy part.
yes, I agree. It's really cringy. But I mean, if you look at the context, all they were talking about is trade a lot in
I
context.
agree. That's why I agree with you. It is in context. I agree.
But he says about 2 sentences later, we were bringing back our jobs, we were bringing back our borders, we were bringing back our wealth, we were bringing back our dreams. Again, while this may be that sentiment and all, with the exception of really our borders, I think this is all wrong. We already have our jobs, we already have our wealth. What he's wanting to do is basically destroy more jobs and wealth by bringing protections back. And I don't think he's going to bring back any jobs. Any jobs to bring back from China, or any jobs that come back from China are going to be low-wage jobs, and it's going to be easily mechanized.
Well, I think there's going to be some jobs that will be brought back, and not just brought back, but I think they'll be not necessarily brought back from other countries, but not that they even necessarily left. It's just it'll be more of a hiring-friendly economy, in my opinion.
I agree it could be more hiring-friendly, but I think when he says back our jobs, he's not going to bring back any jobs. That implies to bring them back. Jobs that were here, left, and coming back.
Well, I mean, there are some that can come back. It's not cookie cutter always the case that it's low wage jobs. I know Steve Jobs talked about Apple and bringing Apple products back, and he could actually do it cheaper if we didn't have such regulations and taxations. And now it's looking like it is a possibility.
And again, I think if they brought the iPhone back to the United States, it'd be almost completely robots based.
Well,
managers, and that's it.
We'll see, because even if it is the case, somebody's got to make the robot. Someone's got to maintain the robot. That's still
well,
a job.
I mean, I think the problem with that argument
Technology
is
the
the robot can make the robot. You need someone to basically input what the robot needs to make.
Because if you look at like technology in general, it's often frowned upon, but it really shouldn't be, because the jobs that we have now were never even thought of in the 90s. So technology is a great job creator, actually, and I don't think it's something we should shy away from. Karl Marx kind of wrote about technology being really bad for the workers, but I would say that kind of ignores a lot of economic consensus that technology is actually good for advancing the economy.
And I think this consensus really is going to go under scrutiny next decade or two. Because, I mean, if you look at many jobs, we're going to soon have trailers. Oh gosh, I'm blanking. But
I will say this, that if you're a factory worker and kind of doing something that's easy to replace, you're probably in trouble. But if you're somebody that is studying technology and robotics and engineering and whatnot, I think you're in good shape. I don't think you have much to worry about. I think you have a very bright future.
In most states, truck drivers is the leading job, and I mean, which soon wouldn't have automated trucks that don't need drivers. So it's gonna be millions of people going to lose their jobs over the next decade.
Yeah, but
it's gonna be really interesting to see how that happens.
You'll also have more people working on that technology and maintaining it. So I wouldn't necessarily frown upon that.
I think it's gonna be very interesting what happens next decade.
I'm predicting it'll be good for the economy. That's my prediction.
I think it's gonna be good for the economy, but I wonder how equally it's gonna be distributed.
I mean, the unions might get pissed about it, so I guess that'd be interesting.
But that's gonna be that's a good thing, anyways.
All right. So what else did he say?
In about a few sentences, he says, "When you open your heart to patriotism, there is no room for prejudice." And again, this is one design in the speech which is really unifying and basically flies in the face of what the left thinks. He says, "I would think he would say."
Yeah, beautiful. I thought that was beautifully worded. But like I said again, left doesn't care. Still a racist. Still going to protest and destroy stuff.
And he closes his speech, or part of his closing is, "The Bible tells us how how good and pleasant it is when God's people live together and in unity. We must speak our minds openly, honestly, and always pursue solidarity. When America is united, America is totally unstoppable. There should be no fear. We are protected, and we will always be protected. We are protected by great men and great women in our military and law enforcement. And most importantly, finally, we must think big and dream even bigger. In America, we understand that a nation is only living as long as it is striving. We will no longer accept politicians who are autark and no action, constantly complaining, but never doing anything. The time for empty talk is over. Now arrives the hour for action.
Yeah, I mean, I feel this kind of did two parts again. It continued the theme of unifying. And I also felt he kind of wanted to reach out to some of the conservatives that rejected him for some of the stuff he said and some of his actions. The very religious groups, a lot of the Mormon community rejected Trump for McMullen. So maybe all the reference to God, something we don't hear a lot from Trump. He said he believed and he's a Christian and all that, but that's not really a theme of his talking points like it would be for a Mike Huckabee or a Ben Carson. So maybe this was also not just an attempt to unify with the left, but unify with some of the conservatives that originally rejected him.
Yeah, I agree. And again, I think this continued the general trend of unification, which I really like in the speech. And I think that's probably by far the best aspect of his speech. And he goes on to say, do not allow anyone to tell you that it cannot be done. No challenge can match the heart and fight and spirit of America. We will not fail. Our country will thrive and prosper again. We stand at the birth of a new millennium, ready to unlock the mysteries of space, to feed the earth from miseries of disease, and to harness the energies and industries and technologies of tomorrow. A new national pride will stir ourselves, lift our divisions. It's time to remember that old wisdom our soldiers will never forget. And whether we are black, brown, or white, we all bleed the same red bloods of patriots. We all enjoy the same glorious freedoms, and we all salute the same great flag. And whether a child is born in the urban sprawl of Detroit or the windswept plains of Nebraska, they look up at the same night skies, they fill their heart with the same dreams, and they're all infused with the same breath by life, by the same almighty creator. So to all Americans in every city, near and far, small and large, from mountain to mountain, from ocean to ocean, hear these words. You will never be ignored again. Your voice, your hopes, and your dreams will be our American destiny. And your courage and goodness and love will forever guide us along the way. Together, we will make America stronger again. We will make America wealthy again. We will make America proud again. We will make America safe again. And together we'll make America great again. Thank you. God bless. God bless America. Thank you. God bless you. Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, I think it kind of did it kind of another two parts. It continued the theme of unifying, and also the part I really liked about the speech is if you go back and you listen to the first part, there's a little bit of kind of negativity to it when you talk about the jobs and people not doing so well, whether it's true or not, obviously. It's still the theme of the speech. And then towards the end, he gets much more optimistic, talking about our potential, looking forward to the future, and it becomes a much more, feel-good speech. It's like, we're going to be okay. And, obviously a lot of people voted for him and was a little more optimistic that Trump could do something good than Hillary. And I feel at the end of the speech, he did a really good job when he wrapped it up, kind of bringing that optimism to the American people. And I thought that was a really good job, both, just kind of analyzing it and then just acknowledging the greatness of the speech.
Yeah, I think that ending the speech was really, really good. And I mean, I wish I was more of his whole speech. I think the beginning portions, that part about like jobs and stuff. Again,
there were some cringy parts. There were some real cringy parts. I agree.
Those parts I didn't like, but I think it got a lot better.
Yeah. I'll actually go out on a limb here, but overall, I thought it was a good speech. There were some very low cringy points, but overall, a good speech. I actually think Trump's a better speaker than Barack Obama. That's my opinion.
I would disagree with that. I think Obama's a pretty darn good speaker.
Yeah, I mean, he was a good speaker, but I do feel there's more passion when Trump speaks. When you look at it when Obama speaks, sometimes it comes across as more robotic. I feel like when Trump speaks and there's a lot of passion, he's able to invoke emotion a little better. So I think when Obama talks, he comes across as being more intelligent. But I feel with Trump, he's better at getting, playing with your emotions a bit, if you will.
Well, I disagree with that. I think Obama, when he's on a teleprompter, is probably one of the best speakers, but especially in politics.
Well, fair enough. His teleprompter's better. So yeah.
But I think also when Trump is impromptu and Obama's impromptu, they're both pretty bad.
Really? Because when I remember watching him debate Romney, he came across as very.
I mean, but that doesn't really have speech. That's more of a couple of thoughts.
Well, I know. Well, yeah, but it's like
listen to him at the press conference. He rambles a lot.
Obama?
He goes on, yes. Like if you listen to him at a press conference.
And also, he has the tendency to go, he does that kind of long, and I don't know.
He does. And I think Trump's thing is he just says whatever he's thinking in an impromptu speech, so it makes little sense.
Oh yeah, but I mean, in the moment, it feels good. But yeah, overall, I thought it was a good speech of unifying. So, you want to hit on the next segment?
Yeah, sure. Let's go. What do you want to talk about
now? I guess right now we'll go ahead and get into Obamacare, which is probably going to be one of the bigger topics in Trump's early presidency. It looks like Obamacare will be repealed and replaced. And in my opinion, what appears to be the front-running healthcare plan is going to be Rand Paul's healthcare plan, which the entirety won't be released until next week. But we are kind of seeing a little bit of it. And I don't know if you've seen it yet or not, but it's a really good plan.
Yeah, I have it pulled up here now. It's Senate Resolution 3.
Right, yeah, and it basically removes a lot of the mandates in healthcare, which will make it a lot cheaper for people. So that's something I'm really excited about. Apparently, Trump likes the plan, which I think is great. I'm a big fan of Rand Paul, and I'm hoping maybe this will kind of get him a bit of an alliance. So maybe kind of more of the paleo conservative, the balanced budget type conservative will be right there, kind of in Trump's ear, listening to him. And maybe that'll impact Trump's presidency. If this goes through and it passes, I think this would be a good point for Rand if he chooses to run for president in the future, saying that
and if it's successful.
Yeah. Basically saying, hey, look what I did with healthcare. It worked great. So I'm excited about it. I really hope it passes.
I mean, I haven't had a chance to read it or hear much about it. But from Rand Paul, it's pretty Rand Paul. I expect it to be pretty free market. And I've heard it's a pretty good plan from a lot of people.
Yeah, and I mean, Rand Paul himself, just a little side note, he practiced medicine himself for a while. His father practiced medicine for a while. So they know quite a bit about the medical community. And obviously, he's kind of knowledgeable in that aspect. And he's very free market orientated. I think this will drop the price of insurance, which I think will be great for people. I think you'll actually see more people signing up for insurance with reasonable prices. And of course, allowing insurance companies to compete across state lines, also really good. So I think that's really good if we can get rid of Obamacare and replace it with a more free market idea.
I hope we get a plan that goes ahead and gets rid of the mandate, gets rid of the mandate, the pre-existing conditions clause. Again, makes it less mandates for the type of insurance you can have, and maybe gets rid of the tax, which incentivizes employers to give insurance, and also maybe incentivizes health savings accounts, and it does some serious regulation of medicine.
That's another thing. It encourages a saving account as well. I read about that. So yeah. So I'm pretty excited about this. It should come out about a week from now or so. So yeah, I believe it's called the Affordable Care Replacement Act or something like that. So
I've always said that I hope Trump does good, and I really hope he makes basically destroys all the wars I have.
Well, I don't know if he'll do that, but I do think he will do some good things, and I think replacing Obamacare with a free market plan would be
very good.
That would definitely justify my vote for Donald Trump. Stuff like that.
Yeah, I agree. Do you have anything else you want to talk about?
Yeah, let me pull up what we have here, and I'm sure Sam will kind of cut it out perfectly. All right. So if you guys haven't got a chance yet, Hulk and I, and also Sonny, participated in a debate regarding Bernie Sanders, which you can check out. But I thought we would maybe talk a little bit about it. We did do a post-debate review, but that was just kind of immediately after. And I've been able to watch the debate a few times over now, so I thought I could probably do a better job giving my opinion on stuff. What did you think about the debate?
They were very cringy. The only person that I really thought knew anything was Lord Panda, but he only gave an opening statement and now he didn't talk again. I think the other two guys clearly were basically just based off emotion and based off feelings and really didn't have any logical arguments with him.
Yeah, Liberal Panda. We're actually. I hope to have him on another time for a debate. But the other ones were very cringy. I guess we can hit over some of the topics. They're open. We'll start with the opener and we'll analyze that. Liberal Panda had a solid opener for the most part. And then we had Virginia for Bernie, who decided to use his opener to just talk about Bernie's kind of early life.
That was really weird. His argument was basically, well, since Bernie was elected over and over again, Bernie is clearly good. And I basically responded by saying, well, yeah, but 90% of politicians get reelected again, so it doesn't really make a difference.
Yeah, and kind of what I respond to, well, number one, he was a mayor of a small town, and Vermont's a small state, so it's not really that relevant. And then also, he kind of neglected to mention, Sanders had like a 10-year route where he just failed after failed whenever he ran. So it's not like he had mountains of success.
Yeah, it's
and then
go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, you can go ahead.
I was just gonna say, and then the other Bernie guy, not us dot or not me dot us or something like that. I think it was pretty clear he did absolutely no preparation, and I think his opener was just kind of talking randomly. He made no point. He just said Bernie sounded authentic, was one of his arguments he made. He said healthcare is a right. He did talk about that a little bit. Other than that, I don't recall many arguments he made.
I mean, I basically like, well, I like this, so it's a right. But that's really not the right. All right. Makes it seem like all right. But yeah, his argument was pretty trashy too. It was basically, well, I like him. He seems authentic, so he must be good.
Yeah, and I mean, my response to that is that's not an actual argument for anything. A lot of politicians sound authentic. That doesn't mean it's a good idea. So if you're basing your premise on that, you're kind of in a bad position. Healthcare being a right, my question that I asked, and I like this argument, is, what is a right? If it's something you need, then why not socialize at the grocery stores because you need food to live? Where do you draw this line? And they never really answered that for me.
I think their opening statements combined were average, but that's only because the Panda was so good. He brought them up a couple points.
Yeah, I mean, he did okay. He mentioned some things about the Affordable Care Act and premiums going up before. The problem is we've seen a continuous trend. It's not a short-term trend. It's a continuous trend, which I mentioned in my rebuttals a little bit about the Affordable Care Act. He brought up college tuition a little bit, but he basically just said there's bad college tuition, so we should all fund it, which we kind of responded to in our rebuttals. And he talked about climate change, which I'm not buying that climate change is the reason for conflict. I think if you look at religions, if you look at power and corruption, that's, in my opinion, where you're going to find the reason for war, not so much climate change, in my opinion. I didn't get a chance to state that, but that's my opinion.
Yeah, I'm not positive that I don't really buy that argument either. I guess it's plausible sounding. My favorite part of the debate, I actually want to talk about this some, was when Dennis, Virginia Bernie, openly admitted he would rather condemn tournament, poor public schools. School. That's better.
Yeah, that was pretty bad. The other guy didn't even know what that was, so so that's bad.
Yeah, I mean,
I also want to make a statement. He said that that's a violation of separation of church and state, but it's really not because the schools are private. They're not associated with the state. If it was a public school, then yes, it would be.
And beyond that,
And also,
the state is funding a student to go to school and not deciding where to go to school.
yeah.
It's a key difference.
For our openers, I went first with our.
Again, because if you
Go ahead.
go to secular private schools, that would be a discrimination, I think. You can make solid that's actually discriminating against religious schools.
Yeah.
And beyond that, most private schools are religious schools. So unless you actually want to actually condemn them, that gives extra opportunities, you have to let them go to religious schools.
Yeah, and then we'll just take a look at our openers here. Mine basically touched on some of the things Bernie has said, some of the quotes, which are kind of silly, and they didn't defend him at all. I brought up a little bit about his past life, things that Virginia for Bernie seemed to leave out. And then the two main topics I hit on were wealth inequality and the fair share tax, as well as the minimum wage. And they didn't really have any good response for any of it. They said fair share, but they never actually refuted the congressional budget report. And Bernie tried to defend income inequality, but it wasn't hard to debunk. And they had no sources for the minimum wage whatsoever.
Yeah, I mean, they were pretty much not ready to argue anything. They just kind of assumed we would give in.
I probably gave at least 7 or 8 sources for the minimum wage in my opener, and I don't think they gave us a single one. Liberal Panda actually, one of my favorite moments was when Liberal Panda was like, yeah, I took a microeconomics class, and I don't believe in raising the minimum wage anymore. That was probably one of my favorite parts.
It's pretty much established that people who take more economics classes more and more likely to be more right-wing.
Yeah.
And my opening statement really wasn't as much fact-based as yours was, because I was really hoping to get to the facts in the Q&As. So I was kind of saving my stuff at the end, and I never had a chance to use any of it, so I'm kind of regretting not putting it in my opening statement, so I could have slammed them then. But I mean, oh well. Kind of like refuted using logic most of their arguments.
Yeah. I mean, I would have rather have us gone first so we could have controlled the debate, but they really just kind of handed it to us with their very weak openers. They didn't provide any facts. They just kind of made very no argument statements, and then just kind of, it was low-hanging fruit for us.
Yeah, it wasn't very difficult, and I really wasn't worried about winning it. Once I realized Virginia for Bernie and Nick, not me at us, basically were like idiots.
Yeah, and they had no sources. Sonny hit on social justice in his opener. One of their arguments was redlining, which when you were listening to it, they made it sound like it was something going on right now. When we actually look at it, what they were referring to was something that happened in the 60s. And then when we pointed that out, the argument transferred to, well, don't you think that's going to linger on into now? And that's obviously a ridiculous argument.
Yeah, and I'm not very familiar with redlining. What my understanding was actually done because a lot of these communities couldn't actually pay back their loans, so banks didn't want to make them high-priced loans.
Right.
It was basic. It was expected cost, basically.
I mean, they were very manipulative and misleading with how they presented that argument. And once we kind of pointed that out, I don't know if you noticed, but they kind of left it, and we went on to talking about something else.
Maybe they kind of knew we can call it bullshit out.
Yeah. Another thing I want to point out that I didn't point out in the debate, and I should have, one of the arguments the not me guy posed was that we were in our 20s, and that was a refutation to our argument. But I find incredibly ironic when you're supporting Bernie Sanders, who's 90% of his supporters are college students. So not sure I understand his argument there. There's a little bit
of fairness, I'm in my teens, so
Yeah.
I mean,
There were a few classes. We talked about education a little bit. One of my favorite moments was when I was bringing up the ridiculous college courses that are offered, that they would have to pay for. They didn't seem to really defend higher education too much. They kind of rolled over, in my opinion.
yeah, they did.
And then also a little bit on healthcare. It kind of resulted to them using emotional appeal fallacies and basically saying, well, you're going to let people die, and stuff like that. We did kind of provide some
Again, which we never
arguments.
necessarily wanted.
Yeah. Well, I actually want to talk about in a second the straw mans that were used, but we provided evidence that really upsetted them. About the inefficiency of it, as well as why you would support that, and then be against competition and drive down prices. Another argument that we brought up was the VA, which I didn't get really a good counter to that. Just as an
I
example,
mean, it never really counted anything.
No, I mean, looking back on it, they didn't have a whole lot. Then it got into a lot of straw manning. He's like, you guys want economic anarchy. Why not legalize heroin? You hate the poor. Very stereotypical liberal arguments once they lose.
Yeah, I mean, they weren't exactly.
And if you go on Bernie's page, he strawmanned us in his caption there. I forgot what he said, but it was really kind of silly. The consensus was that we won. I don't think anyone other than, I think even Not Me.Us conceded. The only one that thinks he won was Virginia for Bernie.
I think it's pretty demonstrably false that he won, and we clearly won.
Yeah, everyone seemed to like it. That video is actually over 1,000 views now, and I think like 50 likes. So it's doing pretty good.
Yeah, it was doing pretty good. Or is it still doing pretty good?
So overall, it was a really good debate. You guys can watch it if you'd like. Hopefully, maybe we'll have something in the future for you guys. The more we debate, the harder it is to find opponents. It's weird how that works. So hopefully we can find some more
they're
people.
just going to say, well, it's because you guys suck at debating, but in reality, we don't know why.
Yeah. All right. So do you want to kind of get into, let me see what we have here. We could talk about Bernie Sanders a little bit if you'd like. For the next segment. I mean, we kind of already did. It's up to you. You want to skip it, or do you want to talk about it?
We talked about it live. We talked about Todd Town Hall last week, so I'm going to talk about some right today, so I think we should leave it.
Okay. Let's see. You know how long we've been going?
It has 125 views. 1,225 views. You 3 thumbs up.
Okay. Perfect. I think that's all the major talking points for the most part.
Okay, well, I'll stop broadcasting then. Oh, we can do our plugs really quick.
Okay, we'll plug real quick. All right, guys.
All right, guys.
So, go ahead.
Go ahead.
We'll redo it.
No, you go. No, you're hosting. You're hosting. So.
Okay. All right, guys. Thanks for watching this episode of the Turning Table. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed this segment and episode. If you'd like more of this and you'd like to hear our opinion even more, you can follow us on social media. My Instagram is capitalist_American, and my Twitter is capitalist_US. You can follow both those if you'd like. You can also subscribe to this channel, so whenever we do post a video or we have another debate, you'll be notified. And it's also a great way to support us. If you enjoyed this video and this podcast, please go ahead and give us a like. It lets us know to do more, and we definitely appreciate it. All right, Hulk, would you like to go ahead and plug your social media?
Yeah, and before I plug my stuff, I remember I said last week that we didn't have Brian on because we were going to see how good the podcast was without him. Well, you guys overwhelmingly told us that he sucked. You don't want him back. And I'm sad to report we have to bring him back because he owns the channel. We can't actually fire him. So, Brian, looks like you're on for a little bit longer.
All right, I guess I'm keeping my I'm keeping my way around then.
Yeah. Sorry, guys. Again, the podcast quality is going to be a little bit lower from last week, but I'll try my best to make up for it. Anyways, you can follow me at _credible_Hulk. Facebook or the same as that. It's my Instagram. Link to my blog below. It's mrcredible.wordpress. So I guess just go ahead and like my stuff and subscribe.
All right, awesome. See you guys later.
See ya.
Perfect.